What's going on, seniors? It's May 28th. Um, it's 9:48 in the morning. We're gonna try and finish all we have left in the this little personal finance unit today in this video. So I'll just kind of go through each little bit. Again, watch this at your leisure. Could be helpful to you. Um, and then I'll have more information in the coming days about what we're going to do for the rest of the year and how we're going to finish up. All right. So today we're going to talk about salaries, income, budgeting, and credit cards, which is pretty important. Okay. So let's get the salary. All right. So your salary is what you're paid. This should be pretty, you've probably heard this term or you probably understand this pretty well, but salary can be broken down into what you make in a year, what you make in a month, and what you take home in like a month after what you pay in taxes. Um, so, if you get a job and they say, hey, we're going to pay you like $100,000, that doesn't mean you're going to have necessarily $100,000 in your bank account. You're going to be paid $100,000, but then you're going to get taxes taken out. So it's probably going to come to be like more like 70,000, something like that. So, you got to keep that in mind whenever you get a job, right? And you got to always remember that taxes are going to be taken out. Here's kind of a monthly budget that I have kind of just put together. I think is like a fair breakdown of how you maybe should spend your money. So you should never spend more than a third of your month, what you make in a month on housing. So, let's say you make $3,000 a month. That's what you take home. Safely, the most you should be spending on rent is about $1,000. You shouldn't be really spending more than that. That's kind of living past your means. I threw in vehicle there because you got to pay for gas and whatnot, or you got to pay for just a car payment. So that's gonna be like 12%. 10% for food. You want to try and put 20% away into savings somehow if you can. It's harder when you're younger, but it gets easier as you get older and you start making more money to get to that number. Utilities like 15%. This is like gas, electricity, cable, Wi-Fi, all that. Entertainment like 5%. Trying to keep, especially when you're young, try to keep that number low. You're not trying to spend too much money, and overspend your means. And then you always want to save a little bit of money on the side just in case you have other things that come up, like other expenses could be eventually, medical one day you're going to have to pay for, other things you might have to pay for, and this is just assuming you live kind of on your own. It changes as you maybe move in with people. It could change as you make more money. It could change on the things you buy. If you have kids, this is just kind of a rough budget of how I think is the safer way to go for the next couple of years until you start making bigger money. But you can do with what you want, but you got to be sure. You always got to remember what I always tell kids before they move out or they go off to colleges. Remember, you're always going to get taxes taken out. Don't overspend your means. It's better to hustle and live paycheck to paycheck now so you can, do more later. And, if a deal is too good to be true, it usually is. So I always try and advise people. Let's talk about mortgages. We've talked about this a little bit. We've talked about this a couple times in the past. I've tried to sprinkle it and do lessons on it, in class a couple times. So I'm glad we were able to do that. But this is going to be probably the biggest thing for most of you in becoming an adult. Normally you get to pick a house of your choice and you'd figure out like how much it's going to cost, but obviously we're not going to do that. Just remember the lessons we've talked about with the mortgage. Mortgages are the biggest investments you'll ever make in your life. They're going to require a very large loan. They take about 30 years to pay off. You got to pay interest back on the loan that you take out. If you want to live in the Bay Area, if you want to, let's say you want to buy a house in Hayward, it's on the cheaper end, going to put you out about $400,000 to $500,000. More middle of the road, 5 to 6. You're looking for like pretty decent 6 to 7, and then probably 7.5, 8 and up for a nicer place. And that's just in Hayward. It gets more expensive depending on where you live, or less expensive depending on where you live. So a lot of people have left California because, you know, it's so expensive to live here. A lot of people are either moving out of California or moving to the cheaper parts of California, like Tracy, Brentwood, Antioch, Pittsburgh, like Sacramento, things like that. Modesto, Merced, you know, people are moving where it's cheap. All right. You got to keep that in mind though, and you got to make that decision. So there's trade-offs with both, right? If you leave the Bay Area, you know, you're giving up a lot of fun stuff to do, a lot of good weather, a lot of things pop off here. But, you know, if you want to have like a nicer home and live kind of more in like a rural kind of backwater area, yeah, you can live in Tracy and Brentwood. It just kind of really depends on the lifestyle you want. Let's go ahead and we're going to kind of talk about credit cards, all right? Because this is a big one. This one's a dangerous one for a lot of y'all. So pretty much a credit card is a plastic card, okay? And credit card companies that you would know of would be like MasterCard, Visa, American Express, a few others, but Visa and MasterCard are the big ones. The way these companies make a profit is they issue credit cards to people. People use those credit cards and they're using MasterCards or Visa's money. They're borrowing that money when they need to make a purchase. Visa and MasterCard make their profit by charging an interest or a fee when you borrow their money. And it could be a very small fee. And so if enough people are using credit cards and they're getting an interest back or a fee every time someone uses a credit card, then that's how they make their money. So Visa and MasterCard, think of them as loaning out a lot of money, and then eventually people have to pay them back. And sometimes people have to pay them back with an interest. So they have to pay them the money they borrowed and a little bit more. So that's how companies like Visa and MasterCard are able to make a profit, right? Because otherwise, if they just had people borrow money and give it to them back, they would never be making a profit. They'd always be like at zero revenue, and you can't run a business that way, right? So we're going to kind of talk a little bit about credit cards and kind of what goes apart about credit cards. We'll get into loans. Yeah, we're going to try and get through all this, all right? So if you want to open up a credit card, we'll start off like this. You need to apply. It's relatively easy to apply for a credit card, especially now. You can do it online. But they're going to ask you a couple questions like your social security, your name. They're going to ask you about how much money you make a year, things like that, because they want to figure out, okay, should we give this person a credit card? Are they going to use it enough? Are we going to make any money? That's why you apply for a credit card. You can't just sign up for one and you automatically get one. So you typically need to have a job, making at least a decent amount of money. And then the credit card company will give you a card, and they're also going to give you a limit. Early on, when you first are starting out, especially because most of you are going to be working lower to minimum wage jobs, you know, you're not going to have a very big limit, maybe a couple $1,000s, something like that. As you get older, though, and your credit improves and you make more money, your credit limit, how much you can borrow, like how much you can charge on the credit card, will go up. And that's just a product of time and making more money. That's ultimately what that boils down to. Again, some of the major credit companies include Visa, MasterCard, American Express, who else? What's it called? Capital One. You know, what's in your wallet or whatever. There's a couple other ones, but Visa and MasterCard are the big ones. Discover, that's another one. So let's talk a little bit about what kind of goes into a credit card. So the big one here, and you'll hear this in other parts of financing too, it's called APR. It stands for annual percentage rate, the representation of your interest rate on your credit card. So whenever you sign up for a credit card, they're going to mail you all this like information that tells you exactly the deal that you're getting into when you sign up for this credit card. And the APR means how much they'll charge you in interest pretty much on your credit card. So it could be zero, or it could be like 0.0%, like it could be zero hypothetically, it could be a bigger number. So you always want to look at what that APR is, because if that number is really big, that means you're going to have to owe more money, right, when you borrow. But if that number is lower, you won't have to owe quite as much. All right. Let's talk about late fees. These are additional fees you may have to pay on your credit card if you do not pay the bill on time. Some credit card companies will be like, okay, you have a month to pay us back the money. And let's say a month goes by and you don't pay back. Maybe they charge an extra 10% fee on whatever you owe. And then you got to pay that back in the next month. Late fees are dangerous because some people build up so many late fees that eventually their credit debt becomes insurmountable and they can't pay it off. So you always want to make sure that you're trying to pay off your credit card as much as possible. And at best, you want trying to pay it off to zero. And also that you're mindful about not using your credit card all the time and losing track of how much you're using it. Because if you use it too much, then you're going to be in a little bit of trouble and you're going to be owing people too much money. So you want to be careful of that. Let's talk about transfer fee. This one's not as common, but sometimes you'll get hit with a transfer fee when you want to pay off the balances on an existing credit card, excuse me, or loans by transferring them to another credit account. Some people do this and they cycle through, they'll swipe credit card and then they'll pay off. And so they have two credit cards. They'll swipe one credit card and then they'll use the other credit card to pay off what they owe. And then they'll keep swiping. And so it's like a cycle, right? So credit companies are pretty smart and they know people do this. So that's why they a lot of times will do a transfer fee when they know that you're kind of doing the credit cycle, when they're doing that. So that one can happen. I suggest just paying off your credit card with what's in your checking account, what you make. We'll go ahead and talk about interest rates. This is the additional amount you pay for each purchase on your credit card. This number is going to be different. It'll change. It could be very high, it could be really low. Interest rates, again, if you're paying off your credit card, you don't have to worry about a lot of this stuff, but it's whatever you owe on your credit statement, you're going to get charged an interest rate. So just be mindful of that. So the best way to avoid all this stuff is just always pay off your credit card. And then most of the time, you don't have to worry about this. There's a thing known as grace period. Some credit companies and at banks, they'll give you about, 21 days to pay off your credit balance before you get late fees. So ask about a grace period when you apply, or look around. You can just Google most of this stuff. You can also get a cash advance. This is like a short-term loan that's taken out against your credit card. This is good up to a certain amount of cash, but it's really high with the interest. So if you're really desperate in cash, you can do this, but just know you're gonna have to pay it back with much higher interest. This next one is a big one. It's a credit score. The credit score is kind of just an express number that's based on your credit worthiness. Overall, it measures, it's a number. It's going to be a number anywhere from the low end, which could be in the 500s, which is considered really bad, or in the higher ends above 800, which is considered excellent. Some of the factors that affect your credit score: number one, how long you've had a credit card for, or how long you've had accounts open for. So when you open a brand new credit card, and let's say it's your first credit card ever, your credit score is going to be low. It's probably going to be in the 600s or so, because you haven't built up any time with a credit card. You haven't proven you can pay anything back yet. So the first one is time. you don't pay off your credit card, or sorry, when you first open an account, um, right, you're not going to have a lot of time. So the longer you have credit, right, the longer you have credit cards and accounts for, that's going to help boost your score. The other big one is the other big factor that's going to really affect your score is, are you paying your credit and your payments on time? And this could be, let's say you owe money on a credit card. Are you paying all of the money back that you owe, or are you only paying some back that you owe? The more you pay back, the higher your credit score is going to go. And that's a good thing. That's why I always say you want to pay back your credit scores, or what you owe on your credit, because it'll boost your credit score. The next big one, and this one is also kind of a product of time, but you can also get bumps just by being making more money maybe in a quicker amount of time. But your credit limit, the bigger your credit limit is, that's a good representation of how strong your credit score might be, and how your credit score might go up. So these are kind of the main three factors. And then I should mention one more. Hopefully this one's only a negative one though, is if you miss paying your credit card. You can miss a payment. They give you like a 1 month period, where if you miss one payment, you get till the end of the next month to pay it off. If you haven't paid off back-to-back statements, so from this month to that month, you're considered to gone like in default, and you've like gone rogue, and you're not paying your credit score. So you've missed a payment, and that's a huge ding on your credit score. It stays with you for like 7 years, and it like can tank your credit score. So always pay off your credit, even if it means you put down $1, right? That still counts. So don't just go fraudulent, all right? Because that will tank your credit score. Hopefully over time, if you're conservative, if you use your credit card and you are smart about paying it off, your credit score will go up. After a couple years, you'll probably be well above the 700s, probably maybe even the 750s if you're doing the right stuff. And then maybe 7-8 years, you might get close to 800 if you're really, really on it. But just know, credit scores are important, because credit scores, when a car company, if you want to buy a new car, or especially when you buy a new home and you need to take out a loan for whatever reason, they're going to look at your credit score. The better your credit score, the more favorable and better of a loan you're going to be able to get, right? So if you're reckless in your youth, in your college years, and you tank your credit score, you're going to really pay for it throughout your 20s, even into your 30s. Because it's going to take a long time to make up your credit score. So it's better to really stay on it from the jump and have a good credit score, so that later on in life, it'll be easier for you to have more favorable loans when you need to get a new car, when you need to get a loan for whatever reason, or like you want to open a business, or if you wanted to buy a house. And that's why your credit score is so important. Yeah. And then I'd say one last thing. You want to use your credit card more than you'd ever use a debit card, especially once you start getting a real job with real money that you'll be able to pay back what you owe on your credit account. That's going to be a good way to boost your score. And I guess one other thing to look into about credit cards that's not mentioned in the PowerPoint slides is a lot of credit card companies now offer like rewards for using their credit card. The big one that's really popular with a lot of people is like airline miles. So if you open up, say, like a Southwest credit card, you earn points every time you use their credit card. It's a way to encourage you to use their card. And then eventually, if you use it enough and spend enough money, you get like points that you can use to get free airline flights to different places. So it's a good thing to use. And there's a lot of every company has like their different like thing they're going to get you for. Like Disney has a credit card, you can get Disney points. Pretty much any major business has a credit card, and if you open a credit card through them, you can get points, with that business. So, I only have two credit cards. I have a Chase Sapphire card. That one's pretty good because it gets you universal points. Like I can get sports tickets, I can get airline miles, I can get like concert tickets. It's a pretty good one. And you can use your points for a lot of different things. And then because, I mainly am ever going to fly only on the West Coast, Southwest is like the best airline. If you're going to stick to the West Coast, right? Cheapest deals, best service. So I have a Southwest card because typically 99% of the time when I'm flying, I'm going to fly Southwest. So it just makes sense to have their card in case I'm going to go to San Diego or if I'm going to go to Vegas or, now Southwest goes to Hawaii, right? So it's a good card to have for me. So keep that in mind when you're opening up credit cards one day. Think about, okay, what is this card going to get me points wise, and does that fit with my lifestyle? All right. Obviously, be careful. You could go bankrupt. This is the point when you get to where you can no longer repay your debts. And usually it has to be filed out in the court of law. You have to go through financial restructuring. It's pretty much going to stay with you for the majority of your life because it's a legal document. If you're an average Joe Schmo and you're not a billionaire or a multimillionaire and you declare bankruptcy, it can really affect your future ability to conduct business. You probably hear about billionaires and millionaires who sometimes declare bankruptcy and then they can like all of a sudden still survive and make more money. You got to remember people like who are multi-millionaires and billionaires have multi-millionaire and billionaire friends and connections. So their ability to get back to the top is a lot easier because of their connections for, say, someone like you or I. So bankruptcy when you're rich, not as big of a deal as when you're bankrupt when you're like middle class or poor. So be careful about how much you're using your credit card, and you don't want to declare bankruptcy because it's a long, drawn out process. And there are things that a part of it that are even really above my knowledge and expertise. So best piece of advice, just, be smart with your money and be more conservative than risky. We talked about this credit limit, but this is the limit that you can spend on your credit card. Depends a lot on the value of your credit score or how much you're making. The bigger the number, the more you can, the bigger the purchase you could have, right? But we'll get to that. Or we've already gotten to that, so not too much more we have to talk about. Okay. All right, we're almost there. Yeah, we're just going to talk about loans now. And this one's the last touching one because you're all about to be students next year. Unfortunately, because I haven't seen you in months. I don't know where a lot of you are going to end up going. But regardless of where you're ending up going, the overall cost of college is skyrocketing. This is a pretty good graph that kind of shows you the rising cost of college. Just in a period of, if we look from say 2008 to 2000, this was from 2013, just from 2008 to 2013, the overall price of college, just a public four-year university, it was about 13,000% there in 2008. And now in 2013, it was at $18,000. So the cost is extremely expensive. And unless you are sitting on a pot of money or grandma or grandpa or mom and dad can help pay, you're going to need to take out a loan. So there's a couple different loans you should know about. Maybe that if you're still thinking about it, you need to take out a loan. So the first one is a Stafford loan. This is a loan that comes straight from the federal government. You can get them subsidized. You won't have to make any payments off on the loan until after you graduate. The interest is 3.76%. If you get it unsubsidized, then you're responsible for paying the interest while you're in school. So I suggest getting the subsidized Stafford loan, right? Because it's a kind of a better deal. because it gives you, time to get a real adult job, and then you can start paying off the loans. So that's one version of loans. The other one, another loan there that might be of interest to you is the Perkins loans. This is where the government is going to pay your interest while you're in school. It's a fixed interest rate of 5% a year. There's a 9-month grace period before you have to begin a payment. But unfortunately, the Perkins program has kind of gone in some turmoil recently. The program was ended back in 2017, but then there's been a movement to bring it back. And so the status of which is still kind of up in the air, but I just want you to know about it in case it does fully come back. You can look for it on Google and search around. But that's the Perkins loan. So that one's kind of like a TBD, but I figured I'd let you know because it was, more well-known, say 5+ years ago. Plus loans, these are available to both parents and students. This is funded directly by the federal government, can be used to cover any educational costs, not just tuition. These are nice because let's say you need to pay for room and board, right? Or you need to pay for gas, or you need to pay for groceries. You can kind of add all that money up, and a plus loan is nice because it gives you enough money for school and enough money to actually live. Plus loans are going to come at a little bit higher of an interest rate at 6.31%. So again, if you borrowed $100,000 on a plus loan, you would owe back in total $106,031. Yeah, my math's right on that. So keep that in mind, a little bit higher of an interest rate on the plus loans. And then there are private education loans. These are, hence the name, usually meant for private education because private schools are really, really expensive. It depends on your credit history. So if you don't have a credit score, it's probably not going to apply to you, but it might apply to your parents. The interest rate is pretty high, and these are not subsidized, meaning you will have to pay while you're in school. The only people that are usually going to go after a private education loans are people who are in private schools, because a lot of the other loans aren't going to give you enough money to even pay the cost of tuition. So hence the name private education loans. And so that's a little bit of advice to you on the loans. But the biggest thing is, and what I always tell kids, if you think money is going to be a problem, I highly suggest, if you can, considering going for 2 to 3 years, whether it be a Loney, College of San Mateo, Chabot, Laney, Las Positas, whatever, and go to junior college. Most you can pretty much go for almost free. Actually, now I think in the state of California, your first entire year of community college is now free. So it's the right move to make if you are in a position where you think money is going to be tough. Some of you are like, I don't want to go to Mount Eden 2.0 or UC Hesperian or Shablut or whatever. But tell you what, I have so many friends that went to 4 universities and they weren't in necessarily the best financial position, and it worked out for them, but they owe so much money in loans that they're going to be paying it off into their 30s, where a lot of my junior college friends, and we graduated from the same universities, were in way less debt or almost no debt. So, it kind of depends. If you really want the college experience and you really want to move away, right, and you don't have the money, you can take out these loans and you can go for it. But, if you're from a financial perspective, the smarter move would be save your money and go to junior college. But again, it really depends on what you value and what matters to you. All right. So with that being said, that's the last bit here on personal finance. So this will be the last video for the week. I'll come back at you again with some more information regarding what the next steps are. And I'm going to try and communicate your graduation rules and requirements. And the more I hear about the senior notices, I'll try and share with you. And then we'll go from there. Okay. So go ahead and watch this video on your free time when you can. And I'll stop the share and go ahead and have a good day.